You are looking at 5 fire ant mounds in a single backyard, each one about to be hit with a different DIY killer that someone on the internet swears by. Coffee grounds, instant grits, dish soap, bleach, and gasoline. After 2 days, 4 of those mounds will still be crawling with thousands of angry ants, and the reason has nothing to do with the chemicals and everything to do with a biological fact about fire ants that most homeowners never discover until it is too late. Because the queen you need to kill can be 10 feet underground, laying 1,500 eggs a day, and she has backup queens ready to take over the moment she dies. The one method that actually works does not kill ants on contact. It turns them into the weapon. No one tested this side by side until a pest control expert took 5 viewers' worst ideas to his own yard. You have probably heard the grits myth that they swell and explode. They do not. Every single one of these methods fails except one, and the reason is a biological architecture that turns your backyard into a fortress. For most people, a fire ant mound looks like a pile of dirt, something you can kick over, spray with a hose, walk away. But what you are actually looking at is the tip of an underground city. The mound is just the front door. The real colony runs 4, 6, sometimes 10 feet straight down into the soil, with tunnels branching out like an inverted tree. And at the bottom sits a queen who has not seen sunlight in years. Her only job is to pump out eggs. 1,500 of them every single day. She does not eat solid food. She never touches a crumb. Every calorie she consumes arrives as liquid, fed to her by worker ants who pre-digest everything. That means the grits you dumped on the mound never stood a chance. They are solid. She cannot consume them. They just sit there until the workers haul them out like garbage. But that is not the real problem. The real problem is the backup plan. Fire ant colonies can run a single queen operation or a multi-queen system with dozens of reproductives laying eggs at once. If you manage to kill one queen, the colony does not die. It promotes a replacement within hours. If you poison the surface, the colony simply shifts deeper. If you flood it, they ball up, float, and rebuild somewhere else. You are not fighting a pest. You are fighting a distributed biological network that has survived for 1 million years without your permission. The man who agreed to test 5 viewer-submitted home remedies in his own yard is a licensed exterminator with over a decade of field experience. He selected 5 mounds of roughly equal size, spaced across his property. Each mound got a different treatment: fresh coffee grounds, instant grits, dish soap mixed with water, unmixed bleach, and gasoline, the kind you pour straight from the can. The first 4 were supposed to be the safe ones, the natural cures, the internet hacks. The gasoline was the one he knew would work, because gasoline kills everything it touches. But he also knew something else. It violates environmental laws in every state. It poisons soil for a decade, and if you light it, you are holding a match over a fuel depot with no way to control the outcome. He poured it slowly, letting the liquid run down into the tunnels. Then he struck the match. The entire mound ignited in a whoosh that singed his eyebrows and sent a column of black smoke over the neighborhood. The neighbors called the fire department, but the real shock would not arrive until 2 days later, when he dug into that mound and discovered something that made him never try this again. 2 days later, he walked back out to the 5 mounds with a shovel in one hand and a camera in the other. He started with the coffee grounds. The mound looked exactly the same as before. Fresh grounds scattered across the top like someone had dumped out a French press. But the ants had not abandoned it. Workers were still threading in and out of the tunnels, carrying dirt repairing the surface. If anything, the mound looked stronger. The caffeine had done zero damage. It turns out fire ants do not metabolize coffee the way smaller insects do. To them, it was just more debris on the pile. He scraped the top layer away and found the galleries underneath packed with ants. The grits mound was even worse. The internet myth says ants eat the dry grits. The grits swell inside their stomachs and they explode. But he dug in and found thousands of ants that looked perfectly healthy. They had carried every single grain of the instant grits down into the colony and stored them. They were not dead. They were not bloated. They were thriving. The reason goes back to the biology. Worker ants cannot swallow solids. They carry them home, pass them to larvae who can, and the larvae turn everything into liquid. That liquid is what the queen actually consumes. So the grits were never going to harm the colony. They were probably fed to the young ants as a carbohydrate source. Then he moved to the dish soap experiment. On the surface, this one looked like it worked. Dead ants were scattered around the base of the mound, their bodies coated in a greasy film. The soap breaks the surface tension of the water, which means ants cannot float. It also strips the waxy coating from their exoskeleton, so they dry out and die. But when he stuck the shovel in and turned over a large chunk, he found the colony alive and active just 4 inches down. Dozens of tunnels, hundreds of workers, larvae still being fed. The soap had never penetrated deep enough. It killed the ants on the surface, the ones standing on the mound when he poured the bucket. The rest of the colony simply sealed off the flooded tunnels and waited it out. A few hours later, they were already digging new exits. At the bleach mound, he expected a similar story. The site was eerily quiet. No ants on the surface, no activity around the edges. The soil had a faint chemical smell, white patches where the bleach had dried. He dug in and found nothing in the first few scoops. That was the moment he thought maybe bleach had actually done something the others could not. But as he went deeper, about 8 inches down, he hit a pocket of furious ants. Hundreds of them scrambling, shifting eggs, doing exactly what fire ants do when they sense a threat. The colony had not died. It had moved sideways, 3 feet to the left. A new mound was already forming. The bleach had made the soil toxic enough that the ants simply relocated the queen through a lateral tunnel and started fresh. And that left the gasoline mound, the one he had lit with a match, the one that had sent a column of flame 6 feet into the air. The surface was blackened, cracked, almost glassy in places where the heat had fused the soil. No ants, no movement. He drove the shovel in deep, all the way to the wooden handle, and turned over a massive slab of charred earth. Underneath, the tunnels were collapsed, the chambers filled with ash. The colony was dead. The queen was dead. Every ant, every larva, every egg burned to nothing. But as he examined the perimeter of the blast zone, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. About 15 feet away, tucked behind a clump of grass, was a fresh mound, barely visible, only a few inches tall, but with the unmistakable texture of freshly excavated soil. He walked over, scraped the top layer, and found a new queen already laying eggs. The gasoline had killed one colony, but the fire and the vibration and the chemical residue had triggered the surviving ants to split. In the chaos, a group of workers had taken a young queen from deeper in the original nest and escaped through a side tunnel before the flames reached them. Now they were rebuilding in a new location with a new queen in less than 48 hours. The one method that looked like a total victory was actually just the beginning of a larger infestation. He stood there with the shovel, looking at 5 failed mounds and a satellite colony that should not have existed. And he knew that everything the internet had told these viewers was wrong, and the only thing that could actually stop what was happening underground right now was sitting in a plastic jug back in his truck, a bait that did not kill on contact, but used the ants' own biology against them, a bait that the workers would carry down into the tunnels themselves, feed to the larvae, and deliver directly to the queen. But before he could explain that, he had to show them what that bait does inside a colony that a flamethrower could not stop. He drove the shovel into the ground one more time and left it standing there. 5 mounds, 5 home remedies, 0 colonies permanently destroyed, and 1 new satellite colony spawned by the only method that felt like a win. He sat down on the tailgate of his truck and said something that sounded almost like an apology. "They're not bugs," he said. "They're a superorganism. You can't kill them by attacking the mound. You have to trick them into killing themselves. And that is the difference between a DIY hack and a professional treatment. Everything you pour onto a mound is a surface attack. It targets the ants you can see. But the ants you can see are not the colony. They are the tip of a biological iceberg. 1 to 2% of the total population, and they are genetically programmed to die for the queen. You can kill 1,000 of them with soapy water, and the colony will replace them before the weekend. You can scorch the earth with gasoline, and the survivors will rebudget with a new queen 20 feet away within 48 hours. The only way to win is to send a weapon down into the tunnels that the workers carry past every open chamber, feed to every larva, and deliver to every queen's mouth. That weapon is bait, not a poison they step on, not a spray they walk through, but a granule that smells exactly like something they want to eat. The bait is laced with an active ingredient that does not kill on contact. If it killed on contact, the first ant to touch it would drop dead at the entrance, and no one else would touch it. Instead, the active ingredient hits hours or days after ingestion, long after the worker has carried it home, shared it with a dozen sisters, and fed it to the babies who turn it into liquid for the queen. By the time the first ant dies, the entire colony has already eaten. The exterminator reached into his truck and pulled out 3 jugs, each one labeled for a different kind of war. MaxForce complete. Taurus trio. Extinguish. He held up MaxForce first, a granular bait with an active ingredient called fipronil. The concentration is 0.00045%. That number matters. At that microscopic dose, the ant does not taste anything wrong. She walks through the granules, picks one up, and carries it back. Within 3 to 5 days, the fipronil reaches the queen and everything stops. The eggs stop hatching, the larvae stop growing. The colony collapses from the inside out. No mound splitting, no relocation, just a slow shutdown of a city that does not realize it is already dead. Taurus trio was the second jug. He barely said anything about it at first, because the science behind it is almost boring in its simplicity. It is a granular insecticide, not a bait, but a long-game barrier treatment. 1 application in the spring and the yard stays clean for a full year. It works by bonding to the soil so ants that tunnel through it pick up a lethal dose without ever knowing they crossed a line. For a colony that migrates constantly, a barrier turns their movement into a death sentence. But the third jug, Extinguish, was the one he saved for last, and the reason has nothing to do with speed. Extinguish does not kill ants quickly. It contains an insect growth regulator, a compound called s-methoprene that mimics a hormone inside the queen's body. When she ingests it, she does not get sick. She does not die. She keeps eating, keeps moving, keeps laying eggs, but every egg she lays after that is non-viable. The larvae never develop past a certain stage. The workers hatch into sterile adults who cannot feed the colony. Over the next 8 to 10 weeks, the existing ants die of old age, and no new ants replace them. The queen starves, surrounded by the empty husks of the daughters she could no longer produce. That is the long game. A queen who lays 1,500 eggs a day, dying of starvation inside a colony that still has food because the hormone that made her a queen was quietly erased. And the most disturbing part, the ants never know. They keep foraging, keep building, keep defending the mound, until one day there is no one left to carry the food. The superorganism vanishes without ever realizing it was under attack. The exterminator looked back at the 5 failed mounds and the new satellite colony already rising behind the grass clump. Every one of those failures had one thing in common. The ants sensed the threat and responded. The soap chased them deeper. The bleach pushed them sideways. The gasoline triggered a panic split. The coffee and grits were not even threats, just a meal. But the baits did something that no liquid, powder, or flame ever could. They turned the ants' loyalty into a weapon, and the queen died, believing her workers were still feeding her. But he still had one problem left to solve: the satellite colony that sprouted from the ashes of the gasoline mound. It was barely visible behind the grass, a hump of fresh dirt, no bigger than a dinner plate, but every single ant inside it was a daughter of the original queen who had burned. They did not know why the ground caught fire. They only knew they were alive, and they were rebuilding. If he did nothing, by the end of the summer, that satellite would be the mother mound for a dozen new colonies, and the gasoline would have done nothing but scatter the enemy across his entire property. So he walked over to the new mound, unscrewed the cap on the Extinguish, and shook out a light ring of granules around the perimeter. Not on top, not in the entrance, just a halo of tan specks on the grass that looked like breakfast cereal to an ant. He did not dig. He did not spray. He just poured, capped the jug, and walked away. That was it. The weapon was delivered. 3 weeks later, he came back with the camera. The mound was still there, but the traffic had changed. Before, you could see a steady stream of workers moving in and out, organized, purposeful. Now the entrances looked abandoned. A few ants wandered near the edges, slow, almost confused. He dug in and found something he had never seen in a DIY test. Dead larvae piled in the chambers, unhatched eggs scattered in the tunnels. The queen was still alive, but she was laying blanks. Every egg she pushed out since the bait arrived was a dud. The colony was not being burned out or drowned out. It was being aged out. One by one, the workers died of old age, and no new ones were born to take their place. At 8 weeks, he returned one last time. The mound had completely collapsed. Grass was already growing over the soil. He dug a full foot down and found nothing but empty tunnels and the dried husks of a dead civilization. No live ants, no eggs, no queen. The superorganism that had survived a flamethrower had been erased by a hormone it could not taste, delivered by workers who thought they were just bringing home dinner. And that is the thing the internet never tells you about fire ants. They are not just bugs in your yard. They are a distributed intelligence, a network designed to survive everything short of a direct nuclear strike on the queen. The same genetic code that lets a colony split into 2 within hours is the same code that makes 99% of home remedies fail before the sun goes down. You can fight them with soapy water, with bleach, with coffee grounds, with grits, with gasoline, and the ants will keep coming because you never actually hit the command center. You just hit the soldiers standing outside, but the bait changes the equation. It exploits the one thing a fire ant colony was never designed to defend against: its own loyalty. The workers do not hoard food. They do not test it for poison and then warn the others. They share everything. Every granule carried home is divided among 10 sisters, then fed to 100 larvae, then pumped as liquid into the mouths of the queens. You cannot build a better delivery system than that. The colony is a stomach with 1,000,000 legs, and all you have to do is feed it the right meal. The only catch is, you have to know which meal to serve. There are 3 types that reliably work, and they each solve a different piece of the puzzle. A fast-acting bait like MaxForce uses fipronil to collapse the colony in 3 to 5 days. It is the shock troop. A long-term barrier like Taurus Trio binds to the soil and kills migrating queens before they can dig their first chamber. And a growth regulator like Extinguish turns the queen herself into a biological dead end. Use all 3 in rotation, and you have done something no amount of boiling water or dish soap can ever do. You have made your yard uncolonizable. There is a reason this experiment ended with 5 failures and 1 fireball. The homeowner with a bucket of bleach is fighting an enemy he does not understand. The exterminator with a bag of bait is fighting an enemy he has studied down to the hormone level. And the difference is not just effectiveness, it is safety. Gasoline poisons the water table. Bleach sterilizes soil for years. Dish soap and grits do nothing but agitate a colony and trigger a split. The only methods that actually work are the ones that leave the ground alive. The grass growing and the ants dead in a way they never saw coming. One more detail that changes everything. Remember that, according to researchers, if as few as 10% of the workers carry a certain genetic variant, a single queen colony can shift into a multi-queen colony almost overnight. You can have 20 queens tucked away in the same network, each one pumping eggs, each one capable of starting her own empire. The moment the original mound is threatened, the math is not additive. It is exponential. You are not trying to kill one queen. You are trying to kill a system designed to survive decapitation. And the only way to beat a system is to use the system against itself. The baits do that. Everything else is just theater. If you want the exact products used in this test, the 2-step application schedule that keeps a yard clear for an entire year, and the one mistake that makes even professional bait fail, the link is in the description. But do not close this video yet, because the satellite mound behind the grass taught me something bigger than fire ants. It taught me that the most dangerous threat in your yard is never the one you can see. It is the one you just created without realizing it. You can spend a lifetime spraying problems you can see, never knowing the real war is happening beneath the surface, in the dark, where the queen lives. That is not just fire ants. That is everything. The hidden structure, the backup plan, the hormone level fix no one told you about because it costs less than a bottle of bleach and works without a single flame. If this way of thinking made sense to you, there is a special offer waiting through the link in the first pinned comment. I put something together for people who want to stop fighting and start winning. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Drop a comment and tell me which DIY remedy you actually tried before you knew better. I read every one, and the next time you see a mound in your yard, remember, the enemy you can see is just the decoy.